All right, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for our sustainability series on the third Thursday of every month. And next month we have a special treat. So while you're practicing social distancing, we'll have 3 webinars for you in April. So we look forward to you joining us then. I've got up on the screen now how you can view the series. So I hope that you can find your way to there and check out the last one we did, which was great. It came from Sarasota County Extension. Sarah did basically what is sustainability and did a great job with that. But today we're from the Manatee County Extension, and we have our residential urban horticulture agent with us, Alyssa Benson, and she's going to talk to us today about Florida-friendly landscaping and what that is and what that means. So I'm going to get her presentation up and let her take over.
Hi, everybody. Nice to not see you face to face while we're practicing our distancing, but I'm happy to be here with you today to talk about Florida-friendly landscaping. Florida-friendly landscaping really does fit in very nicely with sustainability. It's just another way of thinking about how to implement sustainable landscapes here in the state of Florida. So we're going to talk a little bit about what Florida-friendly landscaping is and some easy steps that you can take to implement it in your home landscape. And I'm assuming that if you're here on our webinar series, you know what extension is, but just in case, I want to just briefly mention that UF-IFAS Extension is a part of the University of Florida. We are one of Florida's 2 land grant universities, along with Florida Agricultural Mechanical University, FAMU. We provide research-based education, and the goal is to allow that information to reach the community. You can check out our Extension Office Interactive Maps link there if you're interested in finding an Extension office near you. So I wanted to start out by talking a little bit about what is the impact of Florida-friendly landscaping. It's nice to sometimes start out by looking at impacts. So when we talk about Florida-friendly landscaping, it really is at its heart a water conservation program. And water quality improvement program. And so you can see that there's this really nice infographic that was put together based on state data that talks about how much water has been saved and how much money has been saved based on the implementation of these FFL principles. And we'll talk about what those principles are here in a minute. But you can see that there's over 380 million gallons of water saved. Which would be enough water to supply 4,300 households with water for 1 year, over $1 million saved on utility bills, and over $1 million saved by utility companies on water preparation and delivery as well.
Hold up one second. I see we're having a bit of a little video issue here. I didn't realize we weren't showing the PowerPoint. As I was moving it on my screen, it's not moving on this screen. So let me try this one. There we go. Sorry about that. There's the graphic she was talking about.
Now you can see the graphic. And so again, just pointing out that because so many households in Florida utilize irrigation, we can really make a large difference in the amount of water available here in the state if we can modify some of our landscape practices to address those irrigation concerns. And a lot of this can be addressed, as I said, through the implementation of the Florida-friendly landscaping principles.
Now it doesn't want to do the share. Sorry about this, guys. I'm learning how to get this screen to operate as it's supposed to. Let's see if I can make it go this time.
Well, while Michelle's working on that, I'm sure all of us can acknowledge the fact that water, while it is incredibly important from a monetary perspective, right? We want to save money on our utility bills, and we want utility companies to save money on delivery and preparation. But we can also recognize that in Florida, water is uniquely important to us because we're surrounded by it wherever we are.
Give me a second. Hold on. I'm so sorry, guys. We'll be pros at this soon, though, because, with the coronavirus, we're going to all be expert webinar folks. Okay, now I had the other one in presentation mode. I think that was my problem. Okay, so now I can put this one in presentation mode. Sorry. We will get there.
Third time's the charm. This is only the second one. So.
Yeah, well, Sarasota did the first one and they were
yeah.
definitely better at that. Okay. Come on. Let me get back here and try it one more time. I don't know why it doesn't want to go in. That was good, right?
I don't know if they can see that. That's a really nice alligator.
Yeah. No, they see you full
Okay.
screen. Okay, now I should be able to get back here and go one more time. Okay, so sorry. It's still not wanting to do it, so we're going to just do it this way. Okay. All right, so there. Oh, you can't see that. It's,
You can turn the other one just a little bit.
yeah, there you go.
That's fine. Okay.
And I'll fix it while you're doing that.
Okay, sounds good. So we're talking a little bit about why Florida is uniquely concerned about our water quantity and our water quality. And a lot of it has to do with the geology of our state. We live in what's typically termed a karst environment, which means that we have limestone bedrock. And because of that limestone bedrock, we have an aquifer system. So rainwater goes through the soil, interacts with the limestone, breaks down the limestone, and we end up with fissures and cavities that water is able to move through underground. So a lot of our drinking water here in Florida comes from our aquifer system or through our surface water. But we do have I'm sure as a lot of you know, a lot of freshwater resources, our wetlands and streams and rivers, as well as our marine resources. And all of these things are connected. So we're connected via our surface waters. We're even connected through our aquifer systems. Here in coastal counties like Manatee, we have interaction between our marine systems, our salt water, and our aquifer systems. You end up with some of your fresh water kind of floating on top of a layer of salty water. So this can lead to you know, some irrigation issues, but really the point I'm trying to get across is that anywhere in Florida, you are surrounded by water, right? We have a really humid atmosphere, we have wetlands, we have the coast, we have the aquifer system. So even if it's, you know, 10, 20, 1,000 feet below you, we're constantly surrounded by water. There are a lot of demands on our available freshwater resources, especially for potable uses, development, and the creation of new impervious surfaces, things like sidewalks and houses and large buildings, can really change the quantity and quality of our water. And population growth is really a driver of both of those factors, development and the increase in impervious surfaces. So as new homes are built and as people move to Florida, we really want to try to reach out to people and let them know what can you do to help conserve this valuable resource that we have here in our state, which is our water.
Okay. So here we go again. We'll just see if I can share that one. Aha.
All right. So what the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program does is it really seeks to provide education and recognition to industry professionals, individual homes, HOAs and communities, some commercial properties, on the FFL principles and how to save and improve our water. So how do we conserve it and how do we improve the water quality? Through the broad umbrella of the Florida-Friendly Landscaping Program, there's also the Green Industry's Best Management Practices Program, which is for industry professionals. But today we're going to focus on what you do in your home landscape.
Okay. I don't know if it's just lagging on me at this point. There we go.
So when we talk about 9 principles, right, we want to think about what are some best practices that can be implemented and applied across a variety of landscapes. And really the goal here is to recognize that as we change the surface of the land, we're changing some of the natural processes that would filter and direct water in certain ways. And so how can we mimic some of these natural processes in practices that we use in our home landscapes? And what practices are realistic and attainable for most residents? What can we actually do? What are things that people are actually going to be able to do? And so out of recognition of these concepts, the Florida-Friendly 9 principles were developed. And here you can see them in all their cartoon glory. Number 1 is right plant, right place, which I think you'll see that a lot of the other principles are really related to that first principle, right plant, right place. If we have the right plant in the right place, then our next principle, water efficiently, is going to make a little bit more sense. We're not going to have to apply so much irrigation water if we've planted a plant that has adequate moisture where it's been planted. So fertilizing appropriately, applying mulch, attracting wildlife, managing yard pests responsibly, recycling yard clippings where possible, reducing stormwater runoff, and protecting the waterfront. Those are the 9 Florida-friendly landscaping principles. And we're going to talk about in detail each one.
I think it's just a little laggy is the biggest issue.
So there's a lot of concepts out there about what a Florida-friendly landscape is. And when I first joined Extension, I know that there were quite a few kind of misconceptions out there that a Florida-friendly landscape could only have native plants, that a Florida-friendly landscape was messy and overgrown. And I think that it really is up to the individual yard, individual owner of that yard, because each yard is unique, right? You can make your plant selections, you decide the aesthetics that you want in your yard. So really Florida-friendly landscaping is not necessarily about what kind of plants you're utilizing or the style of planting, but rather by changing your maintenance practices. It's not going to be a cookie cutter approach. We can't say that this yard should be used in every yard because each yard is different. This is nice, right? It's a pretty yard. We've got a diversity of plant species. We have a large mulched bed. We still have some turf grass, and probably that turf grass is there to keep that pine bark mulch from floating away and going out into the driveway. But this is a Florida-friendly yard. This is certified Florida-friendly. It's met all the criteria. And you can see here that this is something that I think a lot of people would agree is attractive. So even though our concept of a Florida-friendly yard may be related to something that looks a little bit more wild, this is a very manicured approach to having a Florida-friendly yard. So right plant, right place is arguably the most important principle, right? If we recognize what a plant needs, then it reduces the need for water, fertilizer, pesticides, and pruning if you're using a plant suited to the specific site conditions. But how do you figure out what your site conditions are? Well, you have to think about the soil. You have to think about how much sun the site is getting. You have to think about whether there's currently in-ground irrigation or how much rainfall you get. You might also want to think about things like, are there trees in my landscape that are going to get taller and provide shade as they grow? Do I necessarily want to plant plants around that tree that won't be able to handle the shade when it gets tall? So you can see that there's a lot of different aspects involved here when you're first going to go about selecting your plants and designing your landscape. We have a lot of resources available, and I'll mention some of those at the end of the presentation to kind of help you. But one of the things that you can do is you can also do a soil test, and your county extension office will be able to perform a soil test for you. They'll check your pH and your soluble salts, and that'll give you an idea of kind of what the range is in your landscape, and then you can make some plant decisions based on that as well. So if you have a goal to reduce turf grass, which may be some people's goal, then these are some recommendations for what you can do. You can use removing the turf, you can use sod cutter, you can smother with black plastic or cardboard. Physical removal is going to be pretty tough, but some people, if you're only removing a small area, you might be able to do it. And then herbicide is also another option that you could use to get the turf and the weeds out of there first before you move in and add some mulched beds. And obviously you're going to want to replace that bare ground with mulch, ground covers, plant beds. Really a diversity of plants is the most desirable. Now, if your goal is just to reduce your turf grass, let's say that you live in a community that has a 50% turf grass requirement and your yard is currently 75% turf grass. You think, oh, good, I've got 25% to work with. I want to kind of reduce that a little bit. So some steps that you can do would be to plant trees in groups and mulch under and around those trees. Increase the size of your mulch beds just by a foot or two. Increase rings of mulch around trees and maybe connect them to larger planted and mulched beds. When you're doing this, really think about avoiding kind of small islands of turf grass that you're going to have to get out and maintain somehow. You know, think about those little isolated areas. Maybe they're only 2 feet by 10 feet. Is that really necessary to be turf grass, or could I use a ground cover or something there instead of turf grass? Because that could lead to a maintenance headache down the road. So here we have an example of a yard starting out kind of from scratch, just has a little bit of turf grass and some bare ground in the front. And then if we move to the next picture, you can see that they have reduced some of that turf grass. They added mulched beds in front of the house and up into the walkway. You can see that they have a mix of perennial and annual plants there. Looks like rosemary, so get a nice smell as you're walking up the path, and some nice color throughout the year through the use of different perennial and annual wildflowers. And then here we have another example. This is after an herbicide treatment to kill the turf grass, and you can see the painted kind of orange lines there for the sod cutter to get in there and kind of pull it all out. And then we move on to next, and you can see that they've replaced that turf grass with mulched beds. Looks like a lot of native plants here. But again, you don't have to only utilize native plants for a Florida-friendly landscape. So I think that we can definitely all agree that Florida-friendly landscapes can be beautiful, and one of the things that they should also be is fairly easy to maintain, right? We don't want to create a huge maintenance headache for us if we're going to be utilizing these kinds of landscaping principles. So our second principle is watering efficiently. You want to design and maintain a landscape that is going to thrive predominantly on rainfall once your plants are established. Now, a misconception I did want to address is that native plants and non-native plants both require similar amounts of water when they're going through that establishment period. I've met some folks think you can just put a native plant in the ground and walk away. And there are a few that might be okay with that, but for the most part, you're going to need to make sure that you're watering those plants appropriately so that they get established. When thinking about irrigation, efficient design is really going to help save water. So you can see a couple of photos here that highlight issues with the irrigation, right? We don't want to water the sides of houses. We don't want to water the road. There's no reason to do so. All we're doing is creating more runoff. So how can we help conserve some of that water in our landscape when it's there? Mulch is a good option. Mulch provides many, many benefits. Not only does it lower temperatures, keep moisture in the soil, it also is going to break down over time and provide organic material to our really sandy soils that tend to be a little bit devoid of some of those nutrients naturally. We recommend a 3 to 4 inch layer of mulch. And when you initially put it down, it's a good idea to use some weed block or cardboard. You could also use several layers of newspaper, not just 2 or 3, but 15 or so layers of newspaper, and that could work, but definitely weed block or cardboard. We do not recommend using rock or other non-organic materials unless there's a very specific purpose for it, because it doesn't break down and provide those organic materials to the soil. The fifth principle here is attracting wildlife, and I think that through the implementation of the other principles, even if you're not thinking about wildlife, you're going to see wildlife, because you're going to be using a diversity of plants. You're going to be using plants that are suited to the site conditions. You're going to end up with plants that are blooming, providing fruit at different times of year. And really the goal there is to provide food, water, shelter. Think about things that are going to be either constantly in bloom or fruit, or staggering your blooming and fruiting plants, so that, for instance, this time of year we start getting a lot of the coral honeysuckle blooming, and then in a month or so we're going to start getting a lot more firebush blooming. So think about some of those things that kind of cycle through and have higher bloom times. Managing yard pests responsibly is all about utilizing an integrated pest management approach. And what does this mean? This means first you're going to identify what the pest is. So that means you need to go out there, you need to look around, you need to look for damage on your leaves. You're going to look underneath your leaves, check for stippling or chewing or frass, things that look like if you maybe see black sooty material on the leaves, this could be an indicator that you have some piercing sucking insects. So getting an idea of what kind of pests are in your landscape is going to be your first necessary step. And also understand kind of what are your aesthetic standards. If your crepe myrtle has some chewed margins on its leaves, the edges of the leaves are chewed up because of the Sri Lankan weevil, is that something that's game changer for you? You absolutely have to get out there and knock out those Sri Lankan weevils. Well, that's gonna, you're gonna have a different approach than somebody who doesn't really mind if their crepe myrtle is a little bit chewed up now and then. Recycling in the landscape is really great because then you're gonna have lower fertilizer costs down the road, right? If you leave all that all those grass clippings on your lawn, then you're not having to add additional nutrients into your lawn necessarily as much as you would have if you didn't. So thinking about ways to maybe use a mulching blade on your mower. I know that even if you do kind of bag up your grass clippings as you're mowing, I know some people have the bag mowers. If you can take those grass clippings and kind of redistribute them in your planter beds, you could even lay down a layer of grass clippings and then put some more attractive mulch on top. But that way you're getting the benefit of recycling those organic materials into your soils. And then number 8 has to do with reducing stormwater runoff. And you can see a couple of really great examples here of ways to divert your downspouts. And this is something that we see pretty frequently, is that downspouts are kind of leading to impervious surfaces like driveways or sidewalks. But we really want to encourage that stormwater to remain in the landscape as much as possible. So, thinking that water running off the landscape is going to carry soil, debris, fertilizers and pesticides. These things may have an impact on our water quality. So think about ways that you can keep that water in the landscape. And some of those ways are diverting downspouts. Another option may be a rain barrel, if that's something that you're interested in. And then the last principle is protecting the waterfront. And this applies to people who either live on water bodies, or you can even kind of take this approach if you live near a water body. So if you're on a river, stream, lake, pond, bay, even if you live in, the lakes and it's really a stormwater pond, still treat that as a natural water body and maintain what we recommend as the 10-foot no maintenance buffer around the edge of that water body. So from the edge of the water, you want to go out about 10 feet. You don't want to mow in that area. You're not going to want to fertilize or apply pesticides there. It's a good idea, since you don't want to mow, that you replace that turf grass with something that doesn't need to be maintained quite as heavily. So maybe some native grasses, maybe some trees, maybe some nice kind of immersed aquatic plants, So there's a lot of opportunities there for beautification along the waterfront. But this really does, it's going to help the longevity of the shoreline, because as you have fewer maintenance practices along the edges of those shorelines, you're going to have less erosion, but you're also going to see much less issue with a lot of things running off directly into those water bodies. So number 9, protecting the waterfront is a very important principle. So I think you can see that these are pretty easy principles to implement, and they're all based on, just figuring out ways that we can, as individuals, have an impact on our water quality and on the availability of water here in Florida. If you need help, your extension office is available to help you. There are resources online. The first resource you'll see there is floridayards.org. And you can go to that website and you can actually kind of play around with a little yard designer tool. You also have access there to the Florida Friendly Plants database. And you're going to be able to select things like, I want something that's drought tolerant and provides wildlife habitat. And you could select those 2 options, and then you'll get a list of plants that fit those criteria. And so that can help you make some decisions about plant selection. There are some great articles out there. There's an app that the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program has produced. You can go ahead and you can check that out and download it if you want. Here in Manatee County, our office offers the Landscape Assistance Program, which will walk you through a soil analysis and a 2+ hour, if you want it to be, landscape consultation. So what this means is you'll be responsible for performing a soil test in your landscape, and then you come into our office and discuss with some of our Master Gardener volunteers and our Florida Friendly Program Coordinator some recommendations for how your landscape can be modified to be a little bit more Florida friendly. As we move forward into this kind of uncertain time, the next 8 weeks or so, we may be moving to an online platform for those kinds of consultations and discussions. But if you're interested, please click on the link here, and this is an application that you'll fill out for that landscape assistance program. And it asks you some questions about your landscape, asks you to make a few measurements, look at the sun, so that we have an idea of how best to help you when you come in for that conversation. And
okay, so if you participants out there could do 2 things. One is down at the bottom of your screen, you have a chat box. If you have any questions at all, please type those in the chat box, and then I will ask them of our panelists today. I am launching a poll right now, so if you could complete this poll while Pat is talking. So we're going to send it over to Pat Williams, and he is in Sarasota County at their extension, and he is equivalent to Alyssa. They have the same role, just in different counties. So hi, Pat, are you on with us?
I'm on, but I think you need to undo my video or start my video for me.
Pat, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
I see he's there, but I don't hear you. Do you have it on mute,
Well,
maybe?
No, I'm unmuted.
Okay, well, unfortunately, Pat is, well, I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties. We will get better as we move through this, I promise you. But Pat, I see that he unmuted. Oh, the panelists can hear you, Pat. I just can't hear you.
Oh,
Sorry
okay.
about that.
Well, hi, everybody. As Michelle said, I'm Dr. Pat Williams. I'm the residential horticulture agent in Sarasota County. And I would just like to add a couple things to what you've already heard today. Is one of the things that people always ask us is, can one person really make a difference in a big county if I go to a Florida-friendly yard? And we always say yes. Because if we don't start with 1 yard, we're not going to have 2, and we won't have 3. And ultimately, and I'm not going to speak for Manatee County, but we would love to have a Florida-friendly HOA someplace where every house in the HOA was a Florida-friendly. So with that, we kind of go from there. I think another point that I would like to add is that we always try to get people to make sure that you know your local county ordinances. Number 2 was watering efficiently, and at least in Sarasota County, there are restrictions of when you can water. If you have an last digit of your address even, you get to water on Tuesdays, and odd number for your last on Thursdays. There are some different restrictions within different municipalities. So we have City of Sarasota and City of Northport are different than the rest of the county. And then it also comes to fertilizer applications. Realize that each county has different ordinances, and in Sarasota County, we have a blackout that starts on June 1st and goes through September 30th, where you cannot put any nitrogen or phosphorus on your lawn or in your yard, the planting beds, unless you're in Northport, and then you can put nitrogen and phosphorus in your planting beds. We then have other alternatives. So if you really need to fertilize your palms in the summer, you can apply things like a 0-0-16-6, so to help out that. Otherwise, this is a good program, and I think all the county extension offices are here. We are going through a little bit of a difference in programming with the COVID-19 currently in place. But after that, we always can be contacted by email and by phone calls. So unless there's some questions in the chat, then I'll go ahead and mute and let Manatee.
Okay, so we're back in Manatee. Thank you, Pat, and I apologize. I couldn't hear you there for a minute, so sorry to interrupt and talk over you. Alyssa, did you mention about our front door policy that we've implemented for this COVID-19 time period?
No, but I can. If you're here in Manatee County, if you're interested in utilizing some of our resources here at the Extension Office, if you come to our main Extension Office at the Palmetto Fairgrounds, which is 1303 17th Street West, we do have a table out front of our front door where we can take your soil samples, plant specimens, things like that, so that we can still answer questions for you. But we are encouraging individuals to, well, our county office is closed to the public currently, so we can't have you coming into the building, but if you do need to drop off a soil sample or a plant specimen, we have that available at our front door.
Okay, and I don't see anybody that's typed any questions, and so I guess with that, we will wrap it up. Remember, you can find these videos on YouTube, and we look forward to hopefully finding you here again in April for our next one. So thank you very much.
Thank you.